This event is getting bigger every year. Some of you are just learning about what ACT is about. Some of you have been here before and know a little bit about what the ACT is about. Those of you who were here in 2021 may remember we came this close to collapse in the middle of COVID and university shutdowns. And it was achieving cures that sent us a lifeline. And as a result of that, not only did we survive, but we actually helped hundreds of patients during COVID. And I think we saved hundreds of lives since and launched new clinical trials. However, in my mind, today's event is more than about ACT or about our program at the university. I'd say it's about each one of us. It's about our children. It's about the kind of world we want them to live in. I can see big battles emerging, coming up, and really unless we all band together and present an alternative model, really have no chance. So I'll tell you a little bit about the story going back, trying to be brief, but it starts with a patient. So that was the index case. Now you've heard patient 0 from ulcerative colitis. This was an earlier patient with this presentation. So it was a 61-year-old woman. She came with chronic diarrhea that she had for 8 months to that point. That started after an antibiotic treatment. She was hospitalized multiple times. She was basically living in a wheelchair, having bowel movements every 15 minutes. She lost about 60 pounds of weight. And the disease that she had is recurrent C. diff infection. So let me tell you a little bit about that. So just the basics, your digestive system. You eat, goes in the stomach, small bowel, things get absorbed. The last part of the digestive process is done in the colon, and that's where the microbes will finish the digestive process. So whenever you take antibiotics, it's like you throw a grenade in there, and that microbial community gets disrupted. And that's when you become vulnerable to this particular infection, C. diff. And then, of course, we treat that with antibiotics to kill the C. diff. But the problem was caused by antibiotics in the first place. So, and the C. diff is kind of smart. It makes spores. And spores cannot be killed by antibiotics. So the patient is temporarily better, and then they stop the antibiotics, it comes back. That particular patient actually did not even respond to antibiotics. She had a continuous illness. And so we thought for about 7 months of what to do, trying different antibiotics. And I thought, well, what she needs is a repair. She needs those microbes back. And that's basically what's done. You put the microbes back. And I'm not going to go into the crude details of how that was done. But what made our experience different from others who were thinking of that is that I thought we need to actually demonstrate these microbes from her donor, it was her husband, were transferred in and stayed in. Okay, so team science is absolutely necessary to get something like this done. It so happens that we're in an agricultural state, and what I needed was a microbial ecologist, somebody who could look at the entire microbial community, not just one microbe, to tell me what changes happened. So that's where I collaborated with Dr. Sadowski, and you can see he's in soil science. That's where the science was. He knew something about dirt, and we were dealing with a waste product. And we made history. This is New York Times 2010. We basically planted the science into this procedure, which I named as fecal microbiota transplant, which then people took over and started calling it fecal transplant, and I'm like, really? And I've been trying to fight the F word ever since, unsuccessfully. it kind of stuck. But really, as far as, most people, or a lot of people, have heard of fecal transplants these days, and have heard certainly about the microbiome. But that was the big starting point where people finally showed microbiome power to heal. That patient, who at that point for a year and a half was basically dying, it was done by a colonoscopy. We put the microbes in. While still in the recovery suite, she said, "I feel different." She was cured. Now, what we did after that for the next number of years is really develop this into mainstream medicine. Blending poop and stuff in the bathroom is not going to be that. So we figured out how do you extract the microbes in and how do you preserve them, so that you can do a lot of testing on this material. And we really thought through how to put together a donor program, because science tells us that a lot of different diseases can go with abnormal microbial compositions in the gut. So we had to pick the healthiest people in our donor program. And we're very proud of it. It's a volunteer-based program, and our donors are our partners. They understand what they're doing it for. They're with us for years. We know them intimately. Not that intimately. And basically, we've reduced this product to just a handful of capsules. Don't even have to do a colonoscopy. That's remarkable. And I've lived a dream as a physician. I've treated over 1,000 patients. And because of achieving cures, I didn't have to think about prior authorizations and arguing with insurance companies. Just give it for free. And it's just a one-time treatment. And there's so many stories, and I can't go on, but I just remember this vividly. A young woman who spent thousands of dollars coming to that point, and then she just meekly asks, "Well, how much is this going to cost?" And I go, "Nothing." And she just broke down in tears. She didn't have a job anymore, didn't have any money. And that's a lot of patients like that. It actually kind of targets some of the more vulnerable among us. All right, so that's our production suite. There's a donor program. There's a QA process. It acts according to pharmaceutical standards. It's the only program, academic program, in the United States that does this. And that's our story, but it's only half the story, because the other half is Peter's story. And Peter's integral to the entire vision of how this was supposed to be. And he told you a little bit about it. He suffered incredibly. And he was just an 18-year-old kid at the time, but he asked big questions. He saw that basically, about $100,000 was being spent on medications. And there wasn't much progress. And he asked, well, if there is like 1% of people in the United States that have these diseases, and an average person, healthcare expenditure is about $50,000, that's like $150 billion a year. With this kind of money, why isn't there cures? Maybe a naive question, but it's not that naive. And I think he felt like not necessarily the center of attention, but like a cog in a big machine that made money for everybody. Made money for the insurance companies, made money for the healthcare system, but he wasn't getting better. So he learned more about the gut. He experienced some of it himself. He lost that particular battle, and he lost his colon. But he experienced something was probably working, and learned about the science of it. So again, this is the digestive system. You look in the colon, if you really zoom in under the microscope, see, you'll see those microbes, and they're eating stuff. That's our diet. And as they're eating stuff, they're making their own chemicals. All of that was put together by design, nature, whatever, however you want to think about it. But it's pretty sophisticated system, and those microbes and their host, it's like a marriage. They talk to each other. About 10% of chemicals in your blood come from those microbes, and they affect everything. They affect the immune system, because that's where the immune system is seeing the microbial world every day, so that calibrates your immune responses. Obviously, they're interested in energy metabolism. So, and so many of the modern diseases, ranging from cancer to obesity to autism, there is a component there that is relevant. And as Peter learned about that, he thought, well, why aren't we doing more research on this together? Why isn't this not happening? So that was kind of a thought that we had this manufacturing figured out, and we could feed different clinical trials across the United States without any commercial interest. We wanted to know the science, not to grab some IP and then come up with a quick drug. That's our program back in 2013. 10 years later, that's our program. It's grown. And among these, we have physicians, we have a computational biologist, we have nutritionists, we have clinical research coordinators, laboratory workers, etc. It is very much team science. It looks bigger, but it's a tiny group. This is the little engine that could. Really, we're the group that did the science. That's our missions. We help patients in need, number one patient at a time. Drive research to develop new cures. And this is our mission here. We want to build a community of people who care. What have we done? Christy will tell you about different trials we're supporting. C. diff, as that infection remains one of the main foci, because we know we can achieve cures there. And so we've collaborated with a nonprofit out of Boston, Open Biome, which distributes what we manufacture across all 50 states. So that translates into thousands of people being helped. Now, you could ask, well, this is our healthcare system. You know, it's great if you're insured, but, and Peter might not know this as a patient, but I can tell you as a physician, half the time I spend is on prior authorization, on all kinds of paperwork, on fighting. I'm practicing insurance, not practicing as much medicine. With this, I was able to practice medicine. And we had a couple colleagues, we sent the material for free of charge as well. And we asked, you know, how ridiculous a question to ask these days, what would physicians do if they didn't have prior authorization to deal with? They would actually make decisions based on what patients need. We actually got surprising results. Like, a quarter of the time, they did not follow what the guidelines say. They did what's best for the patient. These were experts in their field. There's no question of them. So even if you're insured, there's still all this activity behind the scenes that drives the cost up. Now, I would ask you, you would ask me, like, so basically you can take stool and you can make it into medicine. That sounds like a great business plan. Now, we've thought of that. And we do have intellectual property on it, but we're not the only ones who thought of that. Big Pharma thought of that as well. And as of November 2022, there is a product now approved on the market. And they didn't do any really research to figure this out. It was all public. Their innovation was in how they name it. They don't name it a fecal anything. It has a kind of rejuvenating name. And they looked at our research and think, what's the least amount of poop you can use in order to be better than a placebo in order to get approval from the FDA? It was actually in our work written what that amount is, 1 gram. 1 gram of stool will get you a little bit over a placebo. It's not the optimal amount. but that's what they chose to do. And how much do you think they priced it at? $10,000. So if you think about it, one turd is about 100 grams. Translated into dollars, that's $1 million turd. That's what the innovation is about. Brilliant minds thought of that. The president of that company is right here on the picture, getting awarded. It's the tall guy. We can do better. I'd like to show you a video of one of our partners, Colleen Kelly, Dr. Colleen Kelly in Brown University, who's been getting some of these products for us and been treating her patients. Can we have the video, please?
Hi, my name's Colleen Kelly, and I'm a gastroenterologist in Providence, Rhode Island. I've been treating patients with C. diff infection using fecal microbiota transplant or intestinal microbiota transplant since around 2008. I've been exclusively using donor stool from stool banks since around 2014. This has really facilitated treating a great number of patients more efficiently and safely. And I've treated over 300 to date. I've kind of lost count. I've known Dr. Alex Khoruts since around 2010. We met over some shared interest in doing research together, and he and I both believe strongly that this procedure needs to stay available for patients, that it's very powerful, and the availability of donor stool from stool banks is really key to making that happen. And all of these patients that we encounter are going through a really tough time. Some have had to drop out of school or missed a lot of work. They are isolated from their friends and families. It can be very, very devastating. And it's really nice to be able to tell people we've got over 90% chance of taking care of this problem with just a single dose of this treatment. And for that, it's just very rewarding. And there's really nothing like it in medicine. And many, many patients are grateful and send letters or gifts. And I never throw away any letter that I get from a patient. I have a little bag of them, and they mean a lot to me. And there was one patient that I took care of that came to mind. Took care of her in 2020 around the pandemic. And I want to tell her story and share a letter that she wrote to me. So for the sake of patient privacy, we'll call her Mary. She had been in the hospital in the early days of the pandemic for an unrelated infection. And because of antibiotics she got during that hospitalization, she ended up with a bad case of C. diff. She was in and out of the hospital and rehab facilities, kind of back and forth over that spring and summer. And because of tight restrictions in our state and in the nursing home where she was recovering, she was not able to see her husband. So she had not seen him in months and was unable to get home to him because every time she would start to gain her strength back, she'd get another C. difficile infection and relapse and be sick again. When I first met her, she was at the appointment alone with just a caregiver from the nursing home, and her husband was on speakerphone. And it really just brought tears to my eyes to hear them talking to each other through the speakerphone. They hadn't seen each other in over 6 months, and they had been married close to 50 years and had been, due to the C. diff infection and the pandemic, isolated from each other. And I promised her that we would do this treatment and it would work, and I would get her home to her husband. And we ultimately did an FMT via colonoscopy, which was successful. And after a few more months, she was able to get home. And she sent me this letter with a Christmas card, and it was about a year to the date from the time of her procedure, and I just want to share it with you. Dear Dr. Kelly, I'm so grateful that you considered me for your implant. You saved my life. Being in the nursing home for just a few short days of 1 year, I arrived from Yale Hospital in May to the scallop shell weighing 137 pounds. With the sepsis, I went down to 105 pounds. I was in Rhode Island Hospital through May and June, and then back to the nursing home for nearly 1 year. The C. diff cleared up after I stopped the vancomycin in January 2021. When in bed, I think I'm dreaming when I'm holding Ron's hand. I live on the second floor for 47 years in the same apartment. I can't walk stairs without help, but Ron keeps an eye out for me. I had nursing therapy for 5 months. Hopefully the FDA will approve your implant. Everything is risky. I'd rather die than live in a nursing home. May God bless you, Dr. Kelly, because you have made my life and Ron's better. We'll never forget you. You kept your word. You told Ron that you would get me home, and you did. God bless you. That you have good luck in the future. Have a Merry Christmas. Sincerely, Mary Patterson. So this is just one example. Many patients like this, but this one really touched my heart. And she sent me a couple of letters since, updates that she continues to do well. And I want to thank Alex very much for sharing the donor material with our program and to Achieving Cures Together, because without the generous donations and the work of all the people with that organization, patients like Mary we wouldn't be able to treat. So thank you very much. And I look forward to meeting you all at some point in the future.
You know, Woody Allen said, life is meaningless, but it doesn't have to be empty. I disagree. We make our meaning. Something I should tell you about Dr. Kelly. Last year, she donated her own kidney to a stranger. I asked her, why did you do that? She said, well, this gentleman in my gym, he was always so happy, and he made everybody around him happy. And I thought, if I do that, I will make the world a little bit better. I think this is what this organization is about. You join this community, and you give to others. And that's what meaning of life is. Thank you.